In this video I'll show you all the steps involved in how to install a diesel heater. In this case the van is a first generation Mercedes Sprinter, and these were built from 1995 up to 2006. But this video will be of use in nearly any van, as they are all more or less the same. The heater will be installed underneath the passenger seat. It is an Autoterm 2 kilowatt diesel heater. This hole in the floor will be your guide point. From this hole you can measure where to cut the big hole to fit the heater. You can see it from underneath. Take away the exhaust heat shield held in place with 4 Phillips screws. To get it out of there you can pretty easily bend the shield a bit and wrestle it out of place. It's only a thin sheet of aluminium. Now you can clearly see the hole that we saw under the seat base. I use a stainless steel mounting flange. Link under the video. Using this makes installing the heater a lot easier and also makes for a gas-tight seal between the in and outside of the van. I cut a piece of cardboard as big as the hole needs to be. With this template you can now mark where the hole needs to be cut from underneath the seat base. Doing it like this, you make sure you're not cutting into beams or supports that are underneath. I will drill 2 small holes from underneath, and those are the 2 corners of the large hole. The rest you can do from above. I use an air saw to cut the hole. If you would take out the seat base, you could also use a jigsaw. I don't use an angle grinder because of the fire hazard and the damage the sparks cause on the fabric, glass and paint. An angle grinder is not a tool you should use inside a van without taking many precautions. The vacuum cleaner makes sure no iron dust gets to settle anywhere and cause it to rust. Don't forget to also drill a hole for the fuel pump power cable. As said, the heater is a 2 kilowatt Autoterm heater. It's a complete kit and it comes with all the stuff you need to install it. The flange is an extra and can be bought separately. Link below. The heater is directional. The fan sucks in air and blows it over the heat exchanger. That means the side with the fan is the cold air intake side. During the test fitting of the heater, you can also determine where the air outlet should be. The air outlet is a 60 mm from Eberspecher. The front of the outlet can be positioned so you can direct the airflow. For the outlet hole, I use a bi-metal hole saw. Clean it up and degrease everything you have just cut it away, and use some masking tape before you apply a primer to prevent it from rusting. I use a little bit of copper grease on the threaded ends. That way you know that if you have to take the heater out in 10 years or so, it will be an easy job. Don't use the big rings. The flange is designed in such a way that the heater is thermally decoupled from the flange. That means the heat from the heater will not transfer into the flange. The slots around the mounting holes make this happen. A big ring would counter this. Use the small rings instead. When tightening the M6 nuts, make sure not to over tighten them. Tighten them a bit so you think they are too loose, and then undo them a quarter of a turn. Really, that's enough. They're just holding the heater in place, that's it. And don't forget, it's 4 of them. Over tightening these nuts can lead to deformation of the heater housing and can make the fan hit the housing. You can check this by turning the fan with your finger. It should spin freely. Next is the fuel hose. I lubricate it a bit for easy fitting. Do not use grease, because it might block the fuel intake. Tighten the 11 mm hose clamp with a 7 mm spanner, and again, do not over tighten. The exhaust hose should have this cut. Without this, it's impossible to cramp it. Fix it in place using the special clamps. I only use stainless steel hose clamps. They're not included, but I'll put a link below where you can get them. When you look carefully, you can see the exhaust tubing does not touch the flange. This way the exhaust will not transmit its heat to the flange. I glue the flange in place. This will make a gas-tight seal and also protect against rust and keep everything in place. But do not use any sealant, as these are often acidic and will cause corrosion. It also needs to be a heat-resistant sealant, as the flange can get as hot as 70 degrees Celsius. I use a MS polymer especially designed for the automotive industry. Position the heater in place and leave it to settle, preferably 24 hours, but 12 is enough to keep the heater in place depending on the ambient temperature and humidity. The colder it is, the longer the glue needs to settle. Also seal the underside. The heater should be fitted as level as possible. The customer opted for the PU27 control display, which will be fitted next to the sliding door, so the passenger can turn the heater on and off whilst on the road or sitting in the rear. It's also a convenient mounting spot near to the heater and a smooth surface to fit the control to. Position the base plate and mark where the hole should be. The hole should be big enough to fit the control plug. Secure the base plate with the double-sided tape provided or the 2 screws. Remove the protective film from the display. I run the cable underneath the seat base and up the plastic trim. Make sure it doesn't interfere with the seat belt. The extension comes with a schematic. Underneath the vehicle, we have to connect the fuel pump wires to its connector. The pins should slide in very easily, and when they are inserted correctly, you can feel and hear a click as they lock into place. There is no earth or positive, it does not matter which wire goes where. The fuel extraction connection will be made on top of the fuel tank. Start by undoing the hose clamps of the filler hose and have a clean container nearby to catch any fuel coming out of the tank. Remove the 2 screws holding the fuel filler neck in place. You can now loosen the tank straps using a 13mm socket. Clean the thread and use some penetrating oil. When working on anything considering the fuel system, make sure to work as clean as possible. One grain of sand ending up in the wrong place can cause a very expensive part to fail. Mark the fuel sender so you know how it's positioned in the fuel tank. That way you can't make a mistake when you reinstall the sender unit. Mercedes has provided 2 arrows for this purpose. To undo the fuel sender ring, I use a tool. You could use a wooden block and smack it a bit with a hammer, but if the ring is really tight, you might break it. The tool is cheap, a lot cheaper than a new sender unit. I would advise you to buy it. Make sure you're not turning the sender unit, as this might damage the float. Put the whole thing in a clean container. Drill a hole where it does not interfere with anything and fit the fuel extraction pipe. Same here, don't over tighten the nut, as it might cause to leak. Measure how long the pipe needs to be and cut it to length. Make sure there's no debris left in the extraction pipe. Checked the length one last time. It should be a few millimeters shorter so it does not sit on the bottom of the tank, and this will prevent it from sucking in dirt. It has nothing to do with the heater draining the last bit of diesel and thus leave you stranded with an empty tank. The heater uses almost no diesel. If using the heater is the reason your tank is empty, you're an idiot. Also, an empty tank is never a good thing, especially when traveling. Make sure the sender is in the right position and the rubber seal is in place. Press it down and tighten the ring, not too tight. Put a rubber hose connector on the extraction pipe and secure it in place with a hose clamp. Insert the nylon fuel line into the connector, also with a clamp. I use some wax to protect it against corrosion. The fuel tank is ready to be reinstalled now. And that is most of it done. Find a spot for the fuel pump, run the fuel line from the tank to the filter and from there to the pump, and fit the combustion air intake. The combustion air intake and combustion exhaust must point in the same direction to prevent a difference in air pressure when the van is driving. This can cause sooting or the heater shuts down with an error code. In this case, it would be code 78. Fit the pump at a 15-degree angle so air can get out of the pump. Fit the fuel filter with the exit facing downwards so the pump sucks diesel and not air, because the filter will not completely fill up with diesel. And that's it. Good luck. Thank you for watching.